Alright guys, today I'll be going over a game that I played at my club the other night. This will be the final game of the Spring Open, even though there's one more round, as I will be departing for a vacation this summer. I will be playing in two big tournaments in July, including the Canadian Open. So look forward to future recaps of those tournaments. But anyway, let's get right into the game here. My opponent here, his name is Mike. I played him like, I think this is like this must be my ninth or tenth time playing him in various events, and he plays e4, and I played e5. He played the Italian here as I somewhat expected. This is no surprise to me, even though he has a history of playing various lines, including some dubious gambits. But anyway, he played a legitimate line here, which is the Gioco Piano, and then he played knight c3. So now we get into the Italian four knights. And against this, I'm never really familiar with, the perfect way to develop as black here. Um, you have a lot of ideas in the normal Italian lines. You have h6, d6, obviously the standard moves here, but you can decide to play a6 or a5 to get your bishop a square on a7 like this, so your bishop doesn't get trapped on c5. Um, and basically, as I understand, it's best to just play d6, h6, and something like bishop to e6 to contest the d5 square and to invite a trade on e6, where my pawn on e6 would nicely control the knight on d5. And aside from that, you mostly just want to wait and see what white does and just play accordingly. As I played in the game, I played the setup with d6 and then a6, and I played bishop to a7, which is definitely not the optimal way to play, because the bishop this is sort of a waste of a move when d4 is not really a threat, right? Like in the normal Italian lines, when white plays c3 to prepare d4, it makes sense to preemptively go bishop to a7. So this is perhaps a slight inaccuracy on my part, but anyway, he played queen e2 here. A little bit strange. I guess he wants to play bishop to e3 without doubling his pawns, but honestly, just bishop to e3 immediately would have invited a trade here, and I mean, white's completely fine. But anyway, I played h6, another waiting move. Bishop to e3. I wait again. I play bishop to e6. Now it looks like allowing this trade is not great for me because my rook is on a7. But you'll see later on how that rook ends up joining play. Uh, and basically I take back the rook and I can go back to a8 whenever I want. So it's not that big of a deal to have my rook on a7 for the time being. It's just a minor inconvenience. So he took on e6, so he's just trading off all the bishops. That's fine. But I still feel that long term, I think black has the slightly better structure here because he has the f file to work with, the open f file. I also have this pawn on e6, which is very safe. It cannot be attacked by like anything on this diagonal. Um, and I have good control over d4. I can jump my knight there whenever I want, and this knight is kind of restricted on c3. So I was pretty happy with my position here, even though white has successfully traded off a pair of bishops, which normally I wouldn't want to do when I'm trying to play for a win. But anyway, he played rook d1, and I quickly jumped in with knight d4. I thought this was a no-brainer. I mean, if he takes, that fixes my structure a little bit, and it kicks his knight back to b1, which is what he played. This is still fine for whites, because the knight does have some feature on d2. For example, d2 to f1 to g3. Can also go to c4 potentially. But anyway, I played e5 here, trying to keep everything closed in the center here, and preventing white from playing e5 himself, because I felt that white would want to play e5 at some point to open up the position. So I close it off with e5, he castles, and now here is a decision, a very bold decision I made. When he castled here, I thought that white was going to gear up for the f4 break, which is definitely a natural break in the position, because if I allow like f4, f5, and like g4, g5, it could get very dangerous for me, especially if I'm castled already. So knowing that, I decided to play the move g5, which in itself is not the worst move, but it's also slightly dubious because white does have a way to concretely get some counterplay here on the other side of the board, which is what he does. He plays c3 here. And now the big problem is that my center is sort of falling apart. The only move to hold things together is c5, which is what I played. But now white actually has a very strong move in the form of b4. And what white's trying to do is he's just trying to blow open the center as much as possible. And also he has access to the a2 square for a check whenever he wants. He can invade even to e6. Who knows? But yeah, basically white's gonna just blow up in my center, and I would have had to really uh, fight my hardest for to equalize here. Anyway, he took on d4, which was premature, I felt, because it sort of fixes the structure in my favor, because, now the center is closed again, and all white really has going for him is he has the c-file. He has control over the c-file, and as long as I don't have anything hanging on the c-file, then I feel like this doesn't really benefit white all that much to trade immediately on d4 and clarify the structure. Because again, the big problem is this knight. This knight on b1 is really out of place. So he played the natural continuation. He went rook c1, intending to double up on the c file. That all makes sense. So I castled here. Rook c2, and now my goal here is I want to activate this rook. This rook needs to get back somehow. And the problem is I can't exactly go rook a8 because after rook c2, I mean, I feel like black's going to invade with rook c7, and I can't trade him off right away, right? So this felt kind of bad for me. So instead, I decided to activate this rook in a different way. I played b5. And the idea of this move is twofold, actually. The first one is that after b5, my rook has access to the 7th rank, so there's no invasion on the 7th, and also my rook can swing over here, potentially supporting some pawn pushes on the king side, which is where my activity is in the near future. So the other point of b5 is it also restricts this knight on b1, so the knight can no longer gain access to the c4 square, which I thought was very valuable for me. And now this knight is gonna have to spend is gonna have to go on a longer journey to get to a reasonable square. So you double up the rooks with rook f to c1, all standard. Rook g7, I thought was a really nice move. G4 is coming next move, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. So he plays queen f3, which I thought was odd at the time, but it actually makes a little bit of sense. He's trying to just probe on the light squares a little bit, maybe provoke my knight into moving so that he can go like queen g4, invade on e6. And in general, if he allows, if I allow queen g4, then this could be dangerous because of the threat of rook to c8. Now, actually, the best move for black is a move that I considered myself during the game, but I wasn't able to justify it in my head. So actually, the best move is just g4. Just go all in. And the problem that I thought I was facing here after g4 was that instead of responding to this immediately, white, I thought, had queen f5, and now he's gonna go after the light squares, go after rook c8. But it turns out that both of us missed this nice resource for black in the form of knight e8. It's a really nice move. The queen's attacked. Rook c8 can be met with say queen e7, I believe, to just get out of the way, and the knight blocks the 8th rank so that white can no longer trade off all the rooks and neutralize my attack. And now here, I mean, queen h4 is probably coming, and it looks like white is close to busted. So that would have been a lot nicer if I had seen that idea. But instead, I played my knight to a different square. I went to d8. Sorry, to d7. And my idea basically is I want to go to c5, and when he goes b4, I mean, I have like knight e6 and knight f4. So I want to try to reroute my knight that way. Now you might be thinking, does knight d5 work just to go to f4 right away? But actually it doesn't, because the problem here is that I believe the move rooks to c1, rook to c8 is really strong right now, because if I take both the rooks, then it takes my knight. I do have the rook check, but my pieces are just discoordinated, and it doesn't seem to be very appealing to me. I believe there's also there might be a different move like queen to g4, but no, I think rook to c8 immediately is the right idea for white, and that would be a losing line for me. So instead I went to d7, just playing it safe. He went queen to g3, and I go knight c5 as planned. I put pressure on this pawn on d3, and also gearing up for knight e6 and knight f4, because that's where my knight belongs in this position. He plays knight d2, getting his knight out, but now after queen f6, which is again not the best move, but it's also very practical. I mean, I keep an eye on f2, preventing the queen from infiltrating on the light squares, and also making it harder for white to comfortably bring his rooks in the game by invading on on c8. So he goes b4 here. I should also mention that after knight c5, white's best chance actually was was rook takes c5 with the idea that when he takes on e5 here, my queen doesn't really have a great square to go to, and also I'm just losing this pawn, and when this pawn falls, so does this pawn most likely, and it looks like white has some play for the missing exchange, but he didn't play this. I was actually a little bit concerned during the game, to be honest, of rook takes c5, but he didn't go for that. Instead, he allowed this, and now after b4, knight to e6, he made the fatal. He made a really fatal mistake. So he went rook c6 here, which is honestly very illogical. It looks like at first that he's just attacking these pawns, but I mean after knight f4, he's just getting busted on e2, and there's basically no way to stop this. I mean, he can try, let's say for instance he tries rook to e1. Um, I believe I can just go h4 and h5, and when the queen is kicked away, I can take on d3, and this looks pretty decisive to me. And also a6 is obviously completely inconsequential because it's just an a pawn. But yeah, this h5 idea looks to be quite strong. Even h5 g4 is an idea in this position. So anyway, he went queen f3 instead, trying to neutralize this threat. But now I have actually two very clean ways to win. From this point, I ended up going with h5, which is a very simple move. I just threaten g4 next. And if he allows g4, then he's going to have to resign because he either loses d3 with a triple attack on f2, or he allows a fork on e2. So again, there's nothing white can really do here after h5. But actually, the cleanest way to win would have been g4 immediately, which I saw during the game, but I wasn't able to calculate it correctly. Turns out that after h takes g4, after this move, now I can play h5. Now this move is a lot stronger because obviously I'm doing this with tempo, right? As opposed to going h5 now. Now white has a free move, maybe to trade off a pair of rooks or something. Yeah, again, g4 would have been a lot cleaner. Just takes an h5, and this is a very common idea to exploit a hook, is to crouch the right away and then push the other pawn adjacent to it to force matters like this. But anyway, I went h5, he went g4. I mean, this is already capitulation but at this point, but white already was in a very tough spot, so he was kind of compelled to play this. And I just have a really nice combination to finish off the game. I took on h3 here to deflect the queen away from the defense of f2. He takes queen f2, and instead of taking this knight, it appears as though, black just wants to go after this knight and like win a bunch of pawns in front of white's king, but no, you go for checkmate with pawn takes g4. And now this rook that was originally on a8, that recaptured on a7, now swung to g7, and now delivers the final blow on h7. So I thought that was pretty neat. Queen h2, rook h7, takes, and after rook f1, no, I'm not forced to take the knight here or to trade off more material. I just deliver mate by force with queen h4. After king g1, I have queen g3, king h1, and then following rook to h8. It's really aesthetic move. Any king move is going to be checkmating on the next move, and there's nothing white can do. For example, after rook c7, I have king g8, checkmate. After this check, I have also this, and again, any other rook move, I have any king move, and that is checkmate. So yeah, I thought this was a really nice demonstration of how to beat someone who tries to just trade off all the pieces in a boring dry structure. Like from, let's say, for move 7 right here, this is like completely symmetrical, and this is basically like the stereotypical beginner's opening for white, right? So he just tried to trade off all the pieces, but it didn't turn out well for him because I ended up outplaying him. I ended up changing the structure, first of all, with knight d4, which is very important. And after I did so, I was able to outplay him. Even though objectively g5 is a little bit dubious, I still outplayed him because he did not, find this idea of b4, but also he missed my attacking ideas, and he sort of underestimated how quickly it would come. And again, he had many opportunities actually during this game to simplify on c8 here, even at the cost of both of his rooks. Um, but yeah, he made the fight. The final mistake was rook to c6. Um, Instead, he should have gone to c8 to trade off the rooks and trade off a pair of rooks. And when that happens, it's much less likely that I would deliver checkmate. But yeah, that's about it for this one. And I'll be back for recaps of my tournaments this summer. So stay tuned. Stay tuned for that. All right, that's about it.